just like to ask everybody in the room who has children that will either go to or have been to secondary school. I'm actually guessing that everybody in the room will be either at that stage now or have been at that stage. Now, I would like you to think about how you would feel if the principal came up to you and said, look, we only expect half of the sons to pass, and we expect 40% failure overall. How would you feel about putting your child in that school? Well, I wouldn't put my kids there at all, but that's what we're asking parents to do from Northland and down the East Coast. So we've started up an organisation that's delivering education programs in those areas. The key problem that Papatara deals with is student engagement. 40 years ago when I arrived in New Zealand, so I'm not Māori and I'm not from here, but I work with Māori and we do a lot of our work in the north, and we're setting up enterprise with Māori students. But when I arrived here 40 years ago, I couldn't read or write, and I was put into a class full of Māori and Polynesian boys. And we were in the boarding stream in school, and when I was in that class, I knew that my classmates were no less able than I was, but pretty soon I realised that they were just disengaged, and so was I. All of my classmates that I started at school with at year 9 had left and dropped out of school by the end of year 10. Now fast forward 30 years, and I was a science teacher in a secondary school in Auckland, and I was welcomed back by my principal after school holidays, and my principal said to me, look, Marty, you're the lucky one. You've got the 103 science class. We don't expect those guys to pass anything, just make sure they don't burn the school down. So, what that revealed to me, even though it was meant as a joke, what it revealed to me that there's nothing changed in 30 years. So, it was obvious, Māori boys were still expected to fail, and they were being left behind by the education system. The only positive that I could see that came out of that coming from my principal was that I got to do whatever I wanted with that class. So what I did is we set up a trapping program. We had set up a trapping program to protect this bird here on the local lake. It's called the Waiwea, or the New Zealand Dabchick, and the students in my class came out and we trapped it to protect it. Now Sean Gifford, who is in the audience tonight, was one of those students on that course. And he basically taught me more than I ever taught him. Halfway through the year, he asked to borrow $150 to buy 10 traps. So I gave him $150. 2 weeks later, he gave me the $150 back, and he bought himself 40 traps from the profits that he'd made from just from the fur, for the possum skins and fur that he was able to trap. That wasn't quite enough to make me realise what the impact of what he'd just done was. But what he'd done is, at the end of the year, he'd actually bought himself a Hilux, beaten up old four-wheel drive truck, and he was driving along the street of Helensville, kind of yahooing out the window, and I thought, I just realised what he's done. He's actually totally engaged in what we've been doing, and he's got his own vehicle from the proceeds of the small business. So that was a light bulb moment for me, pretty much. So what was the impact? The impact was that all the students in that class passed NCEA 2. But that was only one portion. That wasn't really the part that inspired me. The part that really inspired me was that every student in that group, every single one of those boys was proud of the work that they'd done. Every single one of those boys had enhanced their own confidence and their own mana. And I can tell many stories of how Papatara has changed the lives of young people. Papatara has discovered a repeatable solution to student disengagement. We get them to lead meaningful projects, and after that we actually get them to be enterprising to form solutions to those projects. And then we try to get them to make a few dollars out of their projects with a small enterprise. We call this solution Young Enterprise for Good. Now Aaron McCloy and Lindsay Elliott are working for Papatara in the north at the moment. And Aaron's the head of our curriculum, and Lindsay's head of Māori delivery. So I'll tell you a story about what they're doing up there at the moment. Is that they're working with one of the kura up there called Te Kura Taumata Pangaru, and they've just taken a group of students out to Mitimiti Beach. This was about a year and a half ago now. and they took the students out there, and there's a biosecurity threat there called pyrrhura, which is wiping out the mussel beds. So what the students, when they started to understand what the issue was, they started to get angry. They turned around to Aaron and said, "Well, what are you going to do about it, sir?" So Aaron just sort of, this is our pivot. This is our pivot moment within Papataya. When a student asks us, what are we going to do about it, we stop and we get them to think. Actually, it's not about what we can do, it's about what you can do. So we reverse the question back on them and say, well, what are you going to do about it? This is your place. What are you going to do about it? So that's the repeatable part that we always focus on. When students identify the problems, we don't solve them for them. We get them to brainstorm their own solutions. Then we find help in the community to enable them to start and lead their own small enterprise to address the issues that they care about. So we have companies that we've started up in oyster farms, environmental monitoring, trapping enterprises, and all this year we've got 36 enterprises that the students are engaged in. We have a growing body of evidence that makes us confident that we've cracked the disengagement issue. We've got a broad and deep sort of connection in the north and in Raglan, and it's growing on the east coast and in Wellington. We're delivering all that is required of us from our Tertiary Education Commission, who is currently our lead funder, but we do so much more. Papataya has significant social, environmental, cultural and economic impacts, and just using the pyrrhura as an example about some of the impacts that we can have across agencies. The students organised a competition last year, and 68 of the 100 people in that Miti community turned up on the day to get rid of pyrrhura off the reefs. Now that contributes to MSD's, the Ministry of Social Development's outcomes. With a deeper understanding of the threat of pyrrhura, the whole community now is regularly going back to those reefs and clearing the pyrrhura from it. So it's a sustainable management of a resource that's being depleted in that community, but they're actually removing the biosecurity threat. And that meets, obviously, MPI's Biosecurity 2025 goals. The hapu and marae up there now have, at Miti the hapu and marae mussel beds around Miti are being restored, which contributes towards the Te Puni Kōkiri's Mahanga Kai outcomes. Students have started an organic fertiliser enterprise from the pests, plants, from the seaweed, and from the pyrrhura, and they actually just won a contract yesterday to deliver 1,000 litres of fertiliser. And that contributes to INVI's innovative regional economic development goals. For each of our student enterprises, we could list a similar set of cross-agency outcomes. So what we are regarding ourselves as the perfect organisation to co-invest from across government agencies. We're trying to identify groups within, people within those organisations that can support us at the moment. In a recent conversation with the Prime Minister, with Prime Minister Ardern, she said that we must break down the silo thinking within government agencies. And she also committed to help remove the roadblocks that we've been facing. And those roadblocks come from identifying people within the organisation so that we can then start building what we do there. So Papataya's value proposition is a co-funded approach means a greater effectiveness and efficiencies, and that it will cost less to generate more holistic outcomes. What are we asking for? We are looking for multi-agency partners that share our vision to scale Papataya from 100-ish students working on 30 or so student-led enterprises in 4 regions to 2,000 students working on hundreds of student-led startups across New Zealand.